Okay, let me share my screen for the agenda. Can you see my screen?
I can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a few topics today. The first two are from Feynman. The major one is to review the notation plugin management specification. Then we will spend some time to review the notation 1.1 patch release plan with the proposed scope and also the pipeline. The last one is some updates from the Notary project annual review that Feynman submitted the PR, and we received the feedback from Emily, and she provided some valuable comments. And she also asking other TOC member to review. We will discuss more on this topic. Okay, so over to you, Feynman. You can start this specification review.
Okay, I will quickly go through what the spec looks like and what the existing solution and our desired experience. So let me share my screen. I use my personal HackMD tool to draft this PRD, to draft this proposal. So hopefully, I think we need a central place or a folder to archive all of those historical proposals, prototypes, and design doc. But before that, I think we can focus on the content first. Okay, so I believe everyone of you can see my screen, right?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Yes.
Okay, so for the notation plugin lifecycle management, notation provides the plugin interfaces and the standard plugin spec for users, vendors to implement their own integration with the solutions they want to use. And currently, notation does not support local signing yet. So installing a notation plugin is a prerequisite for signing images or artifacts, especially in the production environment. And as you can see, notation has a few existing notation plugins as listed in the plugin document. So we have these three major plugins: notation Azure Keyboard plugin, AWS Signer plugin, and the Verify Code Sign plugin. And the fourth one is the notation hashcode plugin, but that has never been released due to some reasons. So as we can see, the pain points for the plugin management is that. Sorry, let me hide the float control. Okay, so as we can see that notation relies on an external plugin to sign the images in production, but the current experience is that users will need to install those plugins manually and put those plugin files to specific folders in the local file system. I think this is still very cumbersome for users use notation for the first time, and especially it's quite complicated for users who want to use notation in a containerization environment or in an automation pipeline, right? So to streamline the plugin installation process and automate the configuration, to provide an out-of-box plugin lifecycle management experience, we want to enhance the notation plugin command with a phased approach. So this document walks through the common user scenarios and desired experience of notation plugin lifecycle management. including plugin installation, uninstall, and upgrade. So these are the goals and non-goals. I will not go through the details. As you can see, those are very straightforward information. So we want to provide a convenient way to install, uninstall, and upgrade the plugin. Downgrade the plugin is not considered in this iteration, because this can be achieved by uninstall and reinstall an old version. So I listed some common scenarios and the user challenges when they are using notation and some external plugins. So the first scenario is that users want to install a plugin from a local environment, considering their company has very strict confidential and security requirements. So they can only use notation and the signing tools in a on-premises air-gapped environment. That means all of the installation packages and release assets is to be packaged and distributed to their local file system. The plugin could only be installed from a compressed file in their local file system, and users also need to validate the plugin before installing it. So this is the first scenario. It's also a common scenario that we want to enhance in the first iteration for notation v1.1. The second scenario is about installing a plugin from a remote source. So as you can see, it is quite common that the plugin vendors usually release their plugin packages and the assets on the GitHub release page, OCI registry, and the private address. So as we can see that there are some plugins use GitHub release object storage or even the FTP server to distribute and publish their release file. So users will be able to easily install the plugin with notation, just with an remote HTTPS address or a registry address. So this is the scenario that users want to install plugin from a remote source. So the third scenario is that when users install a plugin in a containerized notation environment, especially for some automating scenario, users containerize the notation in a container, and they want to install a plugin in the notation container environment. It will be a bit complicated that users need to manually configure the plugin file and the location in the host file system. So we want to simplify the experience that users use notation and plugin in a containerized environment. This is the third scenario. The last one is that users may want to use trusted built-in plugins out of the box and be able to customize which plugins they want to make it as the built-in option. I think these three scenarios that are listed here are very common. The fourth one is a little bit controversial since, so Toddy, I see your hands up, please.
No, finish your thought about the fourth scenario.
Okay, so the fourth scenario is that it is also common in other projects like Helm or other cloud native projects. They have a centralized repository or a plugin center, which has a few built-in plugins that users can use out of the box. They don't need to install the plugins from the external sources. And it will provide out-of-the-box experience for users, and especially when users use the notation tooling with multiple providers. And users will only need to install the plugins from external sources in case they want to install the third-party plugins or the built-in plugins cannot satisfy their needs. So the first one, I think we still need further discussion. And this is not for the short-term scenario and the proposal. And I also draw a user journey diagram here. Let me zoom in. So Toddy, please, I think you can ask any questions.
Yeah, maybe you will answer that, but in my head is when you say install, if you go back to the first scenario, which is install from local environment. Yeah. Sorry, the question is, maybe I need a little bit more details. Do I install from zip file? Do I install from something else? In general, my goal is, can I just point notation and tell him, hey, the plugin is stored here. Just use it. This kind of in relation to the containerized version and how, for example, I can tell notation the plugin is in this particular location, either use it or take the files from there and install them as a plugin. That's kind of what I hit as a problem when I was working with notation recently.
Yeah, actually, the plugin format can be the archive file like tar.gz or .zip file. I forgot to put these popular formats here. I think these two are our default plugin format for the scenario one. And users may want to specify where's their plugin files in their file system. So notation will be able to recognize the plugin file location and install it from the file system. Users just need to specify the path of the plugin file.
Okay, the plugin needs to be in compressed file.
Yeah, it's a compressed file like .gz or .zip file.
And we are not considering any other options.
What I mean by other options, do you mean any arbitrary binary file like .exe, MSI, or PKG file?
Yeah, in essence, the plugin is just a executable, right? We don't have anything else like that is part of the plugin. So the zip is actually a compressed file of the executable that is the plugin.
Yeah, actually, I involved the scenario that users may want to install the plugin from a executable binary like exe. I think I explained that in the design UX. So in short, notation will not be able to support other executable files in the first iteration, since the compressed file is the most secure approach to distribute the plugin in the system.
I think there's one more scenario where I think even for most of the product will want to bundle their license along with the plugin. So we will support any bundle format like zip or tar. And we can also support if
Pritesh, I didn't understand. They want to bundle what? Sorry.
Licenses.
Oh, license. Okay, got it.
Yeah, because it's an executable, so probably if you're distributing to the users, you probably want to add licenses for your dependencies or even your own license. So it might not be just an executable. But yes, if users already unzipped on the disk, they should be able to copy that. So I do see the need of supporting just executables. But yes, we shouldn't go into installing EXEs or PKGs or anything like that, because now that becomes platform specific things.
And I do see that there's a plugin, a Notary plugin, which release and distribute their plugin file as the executable file. But I'm not sure if that is a common case for most of the plugins. So this is a Notary plugin. They have their executable file released on their GitHub release page. Okay, please, Toddy, I see your hands.
Yeah, I hear what Pritesh is saying about the architecture specific or executables. I am more interested in kind of the ability to say, look, I already have the plugins installed somewhere on my system, right? And they are the right architecture. Now, either when I upgrade notation or do something to go and say, look, use these existing plugins already. So I'm looking more of not just the installation of the plugin experience, but kind of the overall experience about, okay, upgrading or having the ability to say, look, the plugins don't need to live in this specific folder to which I kind of may not have access because of certain conditions. I may need to actually source the plugins from other locations than the hard-coded folder that we have for notation. Those are kind of the scenarios I'm trying to understand whether we can enable or not.
So, Toddy, what I'm currently talking about is the experience that users already installed the plugin with, for example, an executable file in their system. So users want to use the existing plugin and make it associated with notation. So you mean users are not using the notation plugin install command to install the plugin. They use the example the plugin executable file to install that installed their plugin in the file system. And it's majorly about the upgrade scenario, right?
So oh, sorry, Shiwei, go ahead.
I think Toddy and Fame are talking about two different things. And I think Toddy is talking about the previous scenario that can notation run plugins in another folder. I think that's the question.
Okay, so I think that's another fundamental question related to the notation plugin location configuration. So Toddy, do you want a further explanation about that?
Yeah, that's a fundamental question, that whether we can get them from other point. I had something else which kind of right now escaped my mind, but my I was trying to understand, like, let's say when you say install, right? When I do upgrade a piece of software, right? Are we expecting that if I do upgrade of notation, I need to go and reinstall every plugin, right? That's what I'm trying to understand from the experience. Or can I reuse the existing plugins? How coupled are we from that point of view? The other thing I was expecting to see in this plugin spec is, I remember we had this discussion in the past. Let's say I can go and install notation with Brew now, So I used Brew for installing notation, but I cannot use Brew to actually install the plugins. I need to do something completely different for reinstalling the plugins. So those kinds of things as experience are missing for me, and I'm trying to build a picture in my mind. What are the steps that I need to do to install the plugins? So, and keep the plugins that I already installed and spent so much time configuring not broken after I do an upgrade.
So usually
The
with
other,
unless we are changing the contract, the plugin and notation contract, all other existing plugins should work seamlessly after notation upgrade. Unless there's a contract change between notation and the plugin. And which we haven't done till now. Yeah, we'll cross the bridge when we have to. But right now, in current scenario, let's say if we release a patch right now, customer won't need to upgrade their plugin. They will just need to upgrade their notation.
okay, that makes sense, and I understand that upgrade of notation, unless there is a change in the contract, will not require upgrade of the plugin, which was not the case in a few versions back. But okay, that makes sense. But what about the other things, like for experience point of view, like as part of, let's say, notation, when I run notation, can I tell notation, look, I already have the plugins here? And this is not only for the plugins, in general, the whole configuration experience. Like when I was trying to containerize it, like going and configuring the policies, configuring the trust store, configuring the plugins for notation becomes kind of very
So
problematic.
you can specify whatever path you want, whatever home path you want, and from there, Notation will start looking for trust policy, plugins, and configs, everything. So you can point it to any directory. It's just that right now Notation doesn't support picking like config from one folder and then plugin from another random folder. We don't support that. We keep the hierarchy of folders, and you can point notation to look at any root for that hierarchy, and it will work.
Okay.
So for
Okay,
continuous look,
that makes
you might
sense.
want to point it to like /root or something like that, and that should work.
Okay, then the last thing is, so if I install notation with Brew, can I install plugins with Brew, or do I need to go the manual path or whatever?
Actually, for the same scenario that users install the plugin separately from notation, right? They use the executable file or the homebrew or other ways to install the plugin instead of using the notation plugin store commands. So I think in that scenario, notation should be able to recognize the existing plugin and use the plugin upgrade command to upgrade the existing plugin. But that scenario has not been covered in this scenario list yet. That's a good question. Okay. But I think that should be...
It's a question. I'm not saying that we need to include it. So if you say that the experience that we'll have is, let's say, for people who are using Brew or Homebrew, right?
Yeah.
They go and do Brew install notation. And after that, if they want to actually install a plugin, the step will be notation plugin install, and I point it to whatever remote location. That is still fine. I was just not clear what the experience will be. Okay, thanks.
I think that should be considered in a new scenario that users install the plugin separately, and yeah, we need to consider about that. But it should be considered in the upgrade scenario, and have related proposal for that. That's a valid case. I will append a new scenario on this in this list.
First, I think Todd just asked a question. I can answer that question. So for now, if you install the notation via Brew, you cannot use Brew to install notation plugins. And also, there's another problem is, for example, if you install notation via Winget, should we install plugins via Winget? Or if later we install notation, do we need to, install notation via like something like Snappy? That's from Ubuntu. Do we need to use Snappy to install notation plugins? That means when you release a notation plugin, you have to onboard all the platform that a notation has onboarded. And those platforms may not be able to onboard all those plugins. I know APD does that for the PIP, the pip for the Python. So basically, you can use APD get to install something like a pip, some module, but that experience actually not so good. So I usually use pip-m pip to install Python modules. That's my experience.
A quick time check. We're already 30 minutes in and we still have 4 more agenda items. Should we just leave comments on the doc and then probably Feynman and go and address them later?
I think I'm fine with continue reviewing this doc offline and gather some comments after this meeting. It seems we still have a few scenarios that are not considered and involved in this doc yet. I'm open to more scenarios and questions about existing doc. And I would like to get more inputs from the community maintainers about the idea and scenario of use trusted built-in plugins out of the box. So this is not a very straightforward plugin lifecycle management, but I do believe it provides additional values to users who want to use notation with some popular plugins, especially with the plugins that are maintained by the official community or by specific vendors. This is still very, I think it still requires further discussion. So I will encourage you to help me review this scenario. So I'm fine with leaving this as an offline review item and continue with other agenda topics.
Pritesh, would you be able to provide offline comments? I think at least for now, we reviewed the main scenarios for plugin installation, and also Toddy answered the question how user can how user can install plugin after using Brew install notation. I think that Feynman, we can answer that later. We covered the main scenarios, and what we did in the review is the detailed experience. So yeah, Pritesh, I saw your sum up. Please provide offline comments. Then we discuss that offline. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good to me. I will stop my sharing.
Yeah, Pritesh also mentioned since Rakesh joined today, they want to discuss something about some arbitrary data. But before that, we have another important agenda item, which is about the notation 1.0.1, this patch release plan. So I want to have 5 minutes to discuss it quickly. Let me share the screen. Then we go to the sign arbitrary data. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, this is actually a proposal for notation, the first patch release. The target date is end of this month. And the scope, including some bugs we received recently from users. I listed the major bugs that we need to fix as a scope. And also we have some error messages that user also reported not friendly, sometimes confusing them when they configure wrong certificates. So this is in the notation Quogo repository. And also we have since last release, we have many dependency updates. So it's also important to keep the dependency up to date. So these are the scopes. And the proposal is by end of this month, we release notation, CLI, notation, Go libraries, and notation Quogo library. So what I want to align is that whether any other issues, bugs from participants in this meeting, you see that we need to include in this patch release, and whether you agree with this target date. If no strong opinion about that, so I assume that we align the target date and the scope. But I also I would like to give one more day since I just have this present in this meeting. So maybe Pradesh, you can and also Samuel. Let me check whether Samuel joined. No, maybe. Yeah, maybe Pradesh, you can take a look offline. So let's give one day tomorrow. If no strong opinions or any other items you want to add in the scope, I assume this is what we want to do. Then we can start the PR processing for voting for the release. Okay. So let's hear any comments tomorrow. So if you have any comments, feel free to just comment in this issue. So we have everything tracked here. Okay. Then Pradesh, you can talk about the sign arbitrary data.
Hello everyone. Sorry about the echo. Pritesh and I are present in a single room. I can talk about the last agenda item here. Let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, can you all see the HackMD doc?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we reviewed this doc some time ago, and there are a couple of open questions on this proposal. I wanted to talk about both of them. So in the current proposal, we have let me provide some overview of the proposal here to refresh everyone's memory. So this is a proposal for supporting signing arbitrary data in notation. So after this feature, notation will be signing any arbitrary data like blobs. The signature specification will be similar to what notation is supporting for OCI artifacts today. But this proposal will not deal with any registries. It will allow signing arbitrary bits present on the disk, and then signature will be returned in another file onto the file system, and then customers, users of the tool can distribute the blob along with its signature and verify the signature down the road. So in the proposal, there are two open questions. The first one is whether to provide separate command for signing blobs or not. I think there is some chatter around this. I replied to a few comments there, but in my opinion, I think we should separate the commands just because of the contrasting use cases, the blob signing and registry signing are providing. And I think there are a bunch of flags in the current sign command, like username, password, and then some OCI related flags which do not apply to blob signing. So if we provide blob signing as a flag, then there can be some confusion for the users. And also in the worst case, the sign command would be silently ignoring some of these flags, and that can be bad, since that gives wrong impression to the user that their flags are actually getting used for producing the signed artifact. So that is one thing. And also I feel like the both commands, sign and sign blob, will evolve independently, just because they have different use cases. And to support those future use cases, I think it is better to go with separate commands. Otherwise, we would be shoehorning a lot of use cases into a single sign command. Let's discuss about this before I go to the second question. Are there any concerns with this proposal? Okay. Okay. Let's talk about this second one. I think it is around the new trust policy field called scope. Okay. So for supporting arbitrary blob signing, we need to update the trust policy schema as well. Previously, we have registry scopes as the field for selecting the policies, and in that field, users can give registry URIs, and depending on the URI, a policy gets selected and verification happens. But since registries are not involved in blob signing, we need to rename the field. And the current proposal is renaming it to scopes. And this will be an array. And it will support arbitrary text for selecting the policy. That is the current scope. And I think Patrick has a good comment on this, where he says that allowing free-form text will not allow us to run validations, as the scope selector would be different for registry policies and blob policies. So I addressed that comment by introducing prefixes to the scope values. When a user is defining a policy and writing scopes, they can provide, they can tell whether a scope is OCA scope or a blob scope. Let me see where I added that comment. Okay. So here is the comment. So the values for the scopes field will look something like this: OCI colon the registry URI, or blob colon whatever the free form text that users want to use. So this way we will be able to run effective validation. Like if prefix is OCI, we can ensure that the value is actually a URI, not some free form text. And if it is blob, we can run some regex based validations. So that way we can do effective validation, and also I think that reduces some ambiguity so that users know what policies they are crafting. So this is another change I made. Any questions or comments on this? Okay, if there are no comments, I'll go ahead and update the proposal with these two changes, and also I will start updating the spec docs that are present in the GitHub repository. And those changes will go through code reviews. If there are any comments, we can discuss during code review time as well. All right, I think that's all from my side. Thanks all.
Thanks, Rakesh. I think you just ask comments from the two things, right? One is previously we think we use flags for sign blobs, right? So you think it's better that we can use separate commands like sign notation sign blob and verify blob, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, another thing is about the scope, the value, how we can differentiate from the OCI history and also the blob, right? You suggest that to use a prefix for that.
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Any comments from other participants in this meeting for this one at this moment? I think for the first one for the new commands, I think previously we discussed. I think the my concern on this is that we introduced two additional commands, but I understand the point that it is specifically mentioned that we want to sign blob, right? Don't as you mentioned, we don't include the existing command with too many flags. Yeah, I just want to hear whether any other comments or other things that I mean the pros and the cons that with this new commands, whether any other things that we consider that are not good using flags. Yeah, Shui, please.
From Rakesh's explanation, I do see the trend of separating the blob signing and also the artifact or container image signing. So I think it's good training, but I'm a bit worried about the two commands like the sign blob and the verify blob, because we do have other commands like notation inspect. Later, do we need to support something like notation? It means the blob should be a command set. So instead of like a notation sign blob, a verify blob, and inspect blobs, we can do something like notation blob sign, or notation blob verify, notation blob inspect, or many or other future commands can be added to the notation blob command set. And we can also introduce some blob-specific commands if we need in the future. That's my comments.
So basically, you are suggesting to add a new command called blob, and then sign, verify, inspect would be the subcommands.
Yes.
Is something like that's what you're suggesting, like how kubectl does it.
Pardon? Yes, yes. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Shui has a good point, because from sign blob, verify blob, it is clear, and it is specifically sign blobs and verify blobs. But there are other commands in notation, right? Like inspect, as Shui mentioned. So if that is the case, that we may need inspect blob or other command set. So Shui's suggestion is that we can have a blob command, and under this category, we have different operations that on the blob. I think the problem we want to solve is that with new commands, we also have some other options, right? So whether we need new commands for other operations for blob, or we just have actually we have three options. One, to use flag on existing commands. Two is introduce new commands for every blob operations. The third, we will have a new blob function, a command. Then under that, we have a sub command as operations on blob.
So when a user runs help command on notation, if we go with Shiva's suggestion, it would show sign, verify, inspect, and then blob, right? The help command doesn't show what options that are, what subcommands available under blob. So that is a bit inconsistent documentation. That is one con I see with that. But I think this is worth taking a closer look.
Actually, I have a gut feeling that with a proposal. Okay, so with a proposal from Rakesh and Shui, like the sign blob or notation blob sign, and the corresponding commands for other verify and inspect, it makes me feel that notation defaults to image verification and signing. But for other artifacts, we have special approach, or we have special way to handle in notation, which means image is always the first-class citizen in notation, but for others, it seems still not very consistent in the command usage. My gut feeling is that. Why not come up with notation image, sign, image verify, and the image inspect, but we have blob dedicatedly.
Yeah. So I think there would be two levels of commands, right? At base level, all the commands are dealing with the registries and images, and then at one level below, we are dealing with blobs and any other future artifacts that notation may be supporting. And this can't exist even with the proposal that is present in the HackMD doc, right? The sign command does image signing, and sign blob command does blob signing. And in future, we may have sign XYZ command for signing XYZ. So that is a problem. I mean, not a big problem, but that stays there irrespective of which way we take here. So I think this proposal is not discussing the other commands that may be impacted with this new feature, like inspect, and I'm not sure if there are any others. I think I should go back and review all the other commands that may get impacted with this, and see how these two options will look like, and then we can discuss.
Okay, great. Yeah, for the another things Rakesh mentioned for the scope, the schema for the scope, starting with OCI and or starting with blob. Any further questions on this one? This also requires that we change the spec, right? And we also need to be backward compatible with existing rigid scope solution.
Yeah, that is correct. Introducing prefixes is not making this proposal any worse than what it was. We still need to make these spec changes.
So scope would be anyway new command. We can define whatever convention we want for scopes command. It's like scopes key basically in trust policy. So right now scopes key doesn't exist in trust policy. It's a history scope. Scopes is anyway we are defining a new key. So we can set whatever convention we want for that key.
I just thinking about the experimental feature OCI layout. So for OCI layout, it's not a blob. For OCI layout, we also need to specify the scope. Will this impact OCI layout? Maybe Patrick or Shui, you can help me whether with this prefix it will impact the experimental feature OCI layout. Or OCI layout, this experimental feature also need to adapt to this pattern. Shui, do you have any comments on this?
You mean the scope
OCI
type?
layout. Yeah, the scope.
So the OCI layout, although it's called OCI layout, but it's exactly the same as the registry. So the scope for the OCI layout is and it's like when you verify the OCI layout or sign the OCI layout, that is use the OCI layout as if it is in a certain registry. That's the implication for the scope for the OCI layout. So basically, I don't think it will impact the OCI layout. It will just as it is as usual. But as I mentioned before, if we introduce a type of scope, we need to because there's a breaking change to the trust policy config file. So that means we need to have another version of the trust policy config file. And also, notation can support both versions of the trust policy.
Yep.
Sorry, Rakesh.
Rakesh, I see you have started screen sharing, but I cannot see you screen. I don't know why. It's just me.
Looks like Pritesh is also having that problem. Let me try once again.
So you want to share something, right?
I was sharing just the HackMD document. It should work now.
Yeah, it works now.
Yes, version will change.
Yeah, we'll have to update the version of the policy language.
Yeah, I think, yeah, as Sri mentioned, we needed to update the version, and also maybe in the spec, we needed to specifically mention how we will support the two versions.
Yeah. So the notation tooling needs to support both versions. Is that something we need to call out in the specification language as well? Or are we, do we need to do that in notation documentation?
I think for the specification for the block, right, we needed to update the version, and also because the new version supports the new scheme, right? And we also
Yep.
needed to have maybe have a section of backport capability to explain. We needed to support both versions, or in the notation from the implementation point of view, we needed to specify we need to support both versions of trust policy.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. I think we are at time. We are 2 minutes over. Are there any other comments on the changes?
No, from my side, I think Pradesh, Rakesh, you will get back to us on the commands, right?
Yeah.
And also you will file some PRs on the specifications and the implementation.
That is right.
Okay, thanks. So we are already over time, but sorry, Pradesh.
Sorry, yeah, for commands, I think we can discuss over the Slack channel. Probably we would like to raise the PR by this week. So I think Rakesh can reply on the Slack channel, and we can build consensus there.
Yes, yeah. We don't need to wait for another committee meeting for this. Just we can continue the discussion in Slack and create the PRs. We are over time. One more thing I want to mention is that about the annual review. I have one item in the agenda. Actually, it's expected 2 TOC member to provide review comments. Emily provide one. I think later we need to find a meeting that we need to discuss the feedback from the TOC members, and also discuss what we can improve for the whole Notary project. Okay, we need to schedule another meeting once we receive another TOC members' feedback. Then we will discuss for the improvements and the long-term investment in Notary project community. But please offline to read the comments from Emily and other TOC members' comments on that issue. Okay. So that's that's all for today, I think. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.